Hey, this is Troy Taylor with the Championship Football Coaches Clinic podcast, sponsored by Rack Coach. If you need help in your weight room, you need to get organized, you need to get disciplined, you need to get structured, you need to contact Rack Coach. They have an awesome software that will get your kids lifting on time, doing what they're supposed to be doing. And I'm very excited. It's probably the biggest day in Totem Pole Nation and in the Championship Football Coaches Clinic podcast. We've got Coach Mars coming on. Then we have Chip Lindsay and Gene Chiswick from UNC. Then we have Coach's son, Alex Mars, the high school player relations coming on. But Coach Mars, I met you last year at the in-person Championship Football Coaches Clinic. And you came up to me, Coach, and you said, hey, my son is the high school players relations guy at UNC. You need to hit him up. And I can't remember if he texted me or I texted him, Coach, but that meant so much to me, Coach. So for the people that don't know you, Coach, can you introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you, and then we're just going to talk some ball.
Well, I'm Doug Mars. I'm from Bluefield, Virginia, in Southwest Virginia. I coached at Graham High School I coached at Richland High School for 2 years and at Graham High School for 30 years and retired.
Did you coach Chris Austin?
I coached Chris Austin. I coached had a Mod Bradshaw, Mike Mullins that played for UVA.
Yeah. Todd Massey?
Todd Massey. Sure did.
Coach.
Yeah.
My dad's from Appalachia, Coach.
Oh, really?
My dad is from Appalachia. He was supposed to graduate in 57, but he went to the Marine Corps, and he was there before Coach Riggs. So I played I practiced with Todd Massey and Chris Austin. They were seniors when I was a freshman at Clinch Valley College, Coach.
Well, I'll be.
Yeah.
How about that?
Chris Austin is a big fan of the podcast, and I was supposed to have on the current coach from Graham, but he had some scheduling conflicts. But, Coach, that means so much to me that you're from Graham. I mean, you're from one of the greatest rivalries of all time. So I think we had Coach Tom McDaniel, who was the McKinley and the Massillon rivalry. Now we got Coach Mars, who is at the Graham and Bluefield rivalry. Coach, talk a little bit about that rivalry, man. That's,
it was special and still is special. I know that they were just named like the number 8 rivalry in the nation, and our stadium there was named the number 1 high school stadium in the nation, and we shared that ironically with Bluefield High School, and that was one of those places. Even we had to leave early to get to the games, and we had to go up there and sit in those hot dressing rooms. Golly, sometimes you'd be in there for an hour, because if you didn't leave early, they didn't have like police escorts or anything. You were not going to get to the game on time, and it was just 9,000 to 10,000 people every night that game was played.
So for y'all that don't know, that might be out of state or somewhere in the other part of the country, Bluefield is a city, a town that is actually in 2 states, Virginia and West Virginia, and they have 2 high schools and they play each other. So, Coach, being a high school coach in Virginia, and I just want to fast forward to the latter part of your career. You went to Reedsville in North Carolina. How did you end up down there? Then I'm going to go back to coaching in Virginia.
It was probably divine intervention.
Amen.
I was going to J.H. Rose, and coming back, I got a call from Coach Robinson, who was the coach at the time. And he asked me if I'd come up and interview, and I said, certainly. And, my wife was still in Bluefield at the time, and I thought, good golly, this will be I'm halfway home from J.H. Rose, and I liked it here, and I came down to see the principal, and they hired me that day. And it was really been a blessing. Doug left, but Jimmy T came back from G.W. Danville to Reedsville, and when
did he coach at GW? Because was he the coach at GW when he had like the guy that went to, I think, Georgia, the D lineman, and like when I was playing ball, 1994.
Oh, no. That was either you're talking about either Alger Pugh or gosh, I forget the next guy. But no, Jimmy coached there 2009 and 10.
Okay.
I think 2 years. But since I've been here, we've won 4 of the last 7 state championship games and played it.
Wow.
And we've been very fortunate. We've had really good kids. Been very, very fortunate.
So I don't know much about Reedsville, Coach. Rose is near ECU, I believe, correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay,
Reedsville,
so what is it like there? Is it like is it like Graham? Is it country like that, or is it suburbia? What?
It's more suburbia. It's 20 miles north of Greensboro and 20 miles south of Danville, and it's kind of a bedroom community for the 2 larger cities. And personally, it's a great place to live. My wife and I just love it here.
So how many years have you been there, Coach?
I've been here 11.
Okay, so did you retire from VRS and then go down there and coach too?
Yes.
So how many years did you do in Virginia?
32.
So you did 32 as a high school coach. Then you did another 11 in North Carolina. I mean, so we've had Tom McDaniels, whose son is the coach of the Raiders. Now we got Coach Mars, whose son is high school relations at UNC. When did your son graduate from high school, and where did he go and play ball, Coach?
All right, he played for me at Graham High School.
Wow.
Then and it was really kind of odd. He went to North Carolina State to work out, and I was supposed to play golf in Jacksonville, and my buddy's X-ray tech was killed in a plane crash that day. So I told him, I said, well, Alex, I said, we can drive over to UNC. Drove over to UNC, and I told him I had my long snapper with me. He snapped for him, and it was all really a blessing that the way Coach Mogridge called him. By the time we had gotten to our destination, Coach Mogridge had called him and or had emailed him, and it was just he fell in love with North Carolina.
I mean, it's the Jumpman school. I mean, Michael Jordan. I mean, you don't have to say anything else, and it's the greatest colors of all time. I love their color scheme, Coach. So your son played at UNC. And then after playing at UNC, how did he get hooked up with the high school relations job?
Okay, so he went to JMU and met with a guy that had GA'd there. And so Alex was going to volunteer at JMU. And I told him, I said, well, you need to go in and tell Coach Fedora. So he went in and he told Coach Fedora, he said, Coach, he said, I'm going to intern at JMU. And Coach Fedora said, well, Alex, he said, what are they paying you? Nothing. He said, well, I can pay you that here and you can do the same thing.
What a genius.
So he got to stay with Coach Fedora, and he was in the meeting room every day with Coach Fedora and Keith Heckendorf and that whole Cap and that whole crew. And then when Coach Fedora left and Coach Brown came, Alex interviewed with Phil Longo, and Phil I guess liked him well enough to keep him. And so he was quality control for 3 years, and he worked with Sam and Drake and those guys. And then this position came open with director of high school relations. And I guess Coach Brown felt like that with Alex being the son of a high school coach, maybe he might have an inner angle on how high school coaches reacted or wanted. So Coach Brown hired him. And
yeah, I've never met Coach Brown in person, but I've been told the stories of him as a recruiter and how he was the best. I mean, I guess he still is. He hasn't changed. Coach Jim Tim is commented on LinkedIn. He's up there in Rochester, New York, Coach. He is an avid fan of the podcast. God has blessed you for honoring him, and that is true, Jim Tim. I asked Tom McDaniels this. I said, Coach, would your sons, Ben and Josh, had ever gotten the opportunity to GA with Nick Saban at Michigan State or GA at Minnesota with Glenn Mason if you had not been a high school coach for 40 years? Do you feel the same way, that your son got opportunities because of the work that you put in and the foundation that you laid, Coach?
Well, I'll have to be honest. It didn't hurt.
Yeah.
It didn't hurt at all. I think the biggest thing he picked up from me that I picked up for and I worked for a Hall of Fame coach in Virginia, Glenn Carlock. A thing that I picked up from him was you can never work too hard. And you got to have a work ethic. And I think that the thing that helped Alex, being a father, being the son of a father that coached, that helped him. But the biggest thing is what all of us as coaches know, and that is, if you don't work hard, you're not going to make it. You're not going to be around. And that's probably what he picked up as far as being a coach's son, just an ethic.
Yeah. Jim Tim has a question, Coach. What was the greatest accomplishment and greatest weakness you've encountered, and how to this day have you improved on it? So what's your greatest accomplishment as a coach, and what is your greatest weakness?
As far, picking out an accomplishment, I would have to, I played
4 state championships out of 5 years ain't bad there, Coach.
Well, I've actually been so blessed. I've coached in 10 state championship games and won 8, and it's been such a blessing. Wait a minute, I may have lied too. I've won 6. So
yeah, Coach. When you win that many, Coach, it's just another game.
I'm 6 and 10. I'm 6 for 10. That's what it is. But that's been I consider it an accomplishment in one vein, in that some poor guys never ever get to experience that, and it's an experience all in itself. As far as an accomplishment, I don't know if that's an accomplishment.
Coach, that's an accomplishment, Coach. 6 state championships as a head coach, right?
No. Ironically, I was an assistant in all of those. I never got to coach in one as a head coach.
Wow, Coach. So at Reedsville, were you a head coach or you were assistant?
No, I was assistant in Reedsville.
So you went from being the head coach at Graham High School to being an assistant coach in North Carolina.
Yeah, the greatest thing ever.
Coach. Coach, it is the best. All these young guys want to be the head coach.
Oh, no.
So give the young guys some advice. That, I had a young guy that worked for me, and he was my GA at Virginia Union. He was just out of college from ODU. And he said, I only take a high school job if I'm the head coach or coordinator. And I told him, I said, dude, you've never even called plays. You think someone's just going to hand you over a coordinator spot in high school? Give some of those guys advice, Coach.
Well, you got to pay your dues.
Ooh.
And you don't deserve anything.
Ooh.
You have to earn everything you get. People are not just going to give you positions because their job is on the line too. And, I would never hire. And second of all, I think that's a pretty arrogant attitude to say, well, if I can't be the head coach, I'm not going to coach there. You got so much. Being a head coach is not about X's and O's. It's about being able to deal with people and the personalities. There are so many personalities that you have to deal with. And, you asked earlier, what was my biggest weakness? I was getting myself out of the way. That has always been a weakness, is me getting out of the way.
Being a micromanager, being involved too much and not delegating.
Right. And that was the hard thing to do. And I really didn't learn how to do that till I came here. And boy, they give you something here and you're expected to do it. But they don't go behind you and check you. But yeah, given the choice of being a head coach and assistant coach, and I was a head coach. I've been a head coach of 4 different sports. I'd take an assistant coach every day.
And why is that?
You deal with your specifics. You don't deal with the offense. You don't deal with the in my case, you don't deal with anything else. You deal just with what's specific to you. You don't deal with the parents. You don't deal with the booster club. You don't deal with mowing the grass. You don't deal with lining the field. All you do is, and the others, you don't have to fundraise. The other is that's what taxes you so much is being having to do all that other stuff.
So last year, you came up to the clinic in Richmond, and Coach, I had to rent that hotel, and people were saying, Troy, are you going to do the clinic? And I didn't want to rent the hotel again, because if it got any bigger, I was going to have to rent the Richmond Convention Center. And if it wasn't as many people, everybody would say, well, Troy, it went downhill. So I was my assistant coaches had started this YouTube channel. So I was like, dude, I'm just going to do the clinic on a podcast. And I've done 50 clinics right now in 2 months. So when I did the clinic, I don't know if you know this, but Coach, I was running around like a chicken with my head cut off. I didn't get to listen to anybody. I listened to Coach Bill Mountjoy, who you might know, Coach. I mean, he's a legend in Virginia. He knows more football than anyone I've ever met. But I've gotten to be able to speak to all these people and pick their brains, and it's been so good for me. So why did you come? I mean, you've been coaching for 40 years, and you still wanted to get better. You still came up to the clinic. Why did you come up there, Coach, and what did you think of the Championship Football Coaches Clinic?
I've been, obviously, in 42 years, I've been to a lot of clinics. And the reason I came up there was, there was some guys that I knew who were going to be there. Plus, I just like talking ball. And my son-in-law, ironically, is in Richmond now. And he's a high school coach, and he coached, I guess, King William 2 years ago. And so he and I said, come on, let's go to the clinic. And he'd always want to talk ball. So he said, yeah, I'd love to do that. And we just drove down and signed up, and I got to hear a couple of speakers and talk to some friends I hadn't seen in a long time. It's a great clinic, and it was a great place to have it. And I was really disappointed you didn't have it this year.
Yeah. I mean, Coach, they have all these rules with these NCAA guys. We used to do it at the high school, but
Right.
then, somebody, tells on somebody else that they're coming and it's during a dead period. Well, I've gotten approved by NCAA. There's no players there. There's no recruitable athletes. And, it's a lot easier when you got a school because you got classrooms, you got auditoriums, but that, and then, all these other questions that they start asking. I really appreciate you coming. I appreciate you coming and talking to me. And I want to go back to Southwest Virginia. My dad's from Appalachia. Let's just talk a little bit about Southwest Virginia. Where did you grow up, Coach?
I grew up in Bluefield, Virginia, and I played at Graham High School for Glenn Carlock.
Man.
So
tell me about that, Coach. Being from there and being from that small community and football being so important and playing for a Hall of Fame coach.
Again, it's all a part of being blessed, and being I was a very fortunate young man to live in a place like Bluefield. Bluefield was a great place to live. I always thought. I just thought it was a great place to live, a great place to raise kids. I raised my 2 children there.
Why is Bluefield there, Coach? Is it because of a coal mine?
Everything was driven by coal. Yeah,
the railroad.
Right. The railroad comes right out of Appalachia, comes right out of Grundy, comes right out of those areas down there, and Wise, and comes to Bluefield. That was the yard, and then the yard from there would go to Roanoke and then to Norfolk.
Yeah. Yep. And it sent the coal everywhere.
Yes.
It sent it probably to all the way to Michigan, to Pennsylvania, to Norfolk. Boom.
Yeah. It drove that area, and it kind of drives the country in a lot of respects, but it drove that area.
So what did your high school coach mean to you? Is he the reason that you got into coaching?
Without a doubt, he was the reason I got into coaching. He was such an influence on me. I had several influences in my life, positive influences. One was my father, and then Coach Carlock was probably the second biggest influence in my life. And I saw how he handled things, handled individuals, dealt with individuals, was hard, but loved individuals. And it just made a big impact on me.
Yeah, I've been able to speak to so many different coaches over the last 2 months of doing this. And like one thing we hang our hat on in our program, and it's kind of developed into the clinic, is first thing we want to do is change lives. We want to help change lives. 2, we want to help get kids or coaches to the next level, make them better. And then we want to build champions for life. So that's kind of, here's Kyle Jolly, Coach, who played at UNC. He's coaching high school ball down in Tampa. And Bluefield, West Virginia versus Graham is a great rivalry in that area. Kyle came on the clinic. Coach, he's a big human. He played for Butch Davis. And who was the coach before Butch down there? Coach Bunting?
Coach Bunting, right.
Yeah, he played O-line. He played O-line in the NFL. So he's watching.
Yeah, actually, Kyle actually helped me get a kid on at VMI, a long snapper.
Wow.
And
they did a great job recruiting at VMI.
Yeah,
I told Coach Walk that.
Coach Walk and them guys turned that place around. They sure did.
So after you went to high school, I know you were a teacher, so you went to college. Did you play college ball anywhere?
I did. I played at Bluefield State, an HBCU there in Bluefield.
My AD now, Greg Aiken, he went there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Greg Aiken went there. He played baseball. He's from Severn Park, Maryland, and I believe his mother-in-law is still involved in that school somehow, maybe a dean or something. But
really?
I was excited that they brought football back. And
Tony's done a nice job.
Yeah, so I'm excited. And then, the coach at Bluefield, I knew him well when he was at Wise and at Emory Henry. And so that's exciting for that area to have two college programs.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It sure is.
So when did they shut down football at Bluefield State? What year was it? 1980?
Right. Uh-huh.
Okay, then they brought it back. Who was your college coach? Were there any college coaches that had an influence on you?
Yeah, Mike Mazer. Mike Mazer was a Jim McNally disciple.
Wow.
And
so did he play for him at the Bengals? He
played for Jim. No, he played with him at Buffalo.
Okay.
Buffalo. And he was a disciple of McNally's, and he was so far ahead of his time when he coached me. We zone blocked and he didn't even, it wasn't even a word, but in retrospect, he taught zone blocking that he had learned from McNally. Well, Mike left there and went to Boston College, and he was with Flutie when he flew the pass.
The Hail Mary.
The Hail Mary, and then Mike ended up coaching the Jaguars, and then the Panthers here in Charlotte.
Coach, we're gonna have to get him on here. We're gonna.
Coach, he passed away. He passed away 3 years ago.
Coach, that's why I'm really doing this. Is we're documenting history, because the history of Virginia football needs to be documented. Richmond area just came on in the last 20 years, really. But we're documenting the history of high school football in Virginia. Kyle Jolly says, I coached at Concord as well. Had Mark Large as a tight end.
Yeah, Mark played for me.
Oh, wow. See, small world, Kyle. And then Chris Roberts, hey there, father-in-law. Chris, you weren't expecting to see this today, were you? Huh? This guy's a football guy. I text him. He instantly's on. I mean, it's like, boom. So, that is crazy that you got to play for a guy who would go on to coach pro football. Tell me a little bit about him, Coach. What was he like? Why was he so good? Why did he move up? How did he like coaching pro ball?
He liked the money of pro ball. Because I asked him one day, Jacksonville had signed this all-world guard. And right now I forget his name. But I asked him one day, we were down there and we were sitting in a hotel lobby. And I said, did you ever talk to him like you talked to me? He said, well, I might take him in a private room and talk to him like that. He said, I didn't talk to him like I did you. No. But he was just a man's man. He was a man's man. And he was a great teacher. That's the thing about him. You talking about young coaches. If they want to know what makes them be a great teacher, if you're a great teacher, you'll be a great coach. But if you're a bad teacher, you'll have a hard time your whole career.
So what makes a good teacher?
Have a plan. Stick to don't change the plan. Stick to the plan, but still yet be flexible. Respect your students, but expect them to do the job. There's a expect thing. I've got expectations. I'm more respectful, but we got expectations in here, and this is how it's going to be. And be in charge. Don't be afraid to be in charge.
Yeah, leadership. Everybody wants to be the head coach until it's time to be the head coach. Everybody wants to be the man until it's time to be the man.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, Coach. With all your years of experience, there's a saying, and I asked Chris Beatty this, that coaches for the Chargers. High school coaches want to go to college. College coaches want to go to the pros, and pro coaches want to go back to high school. Is that? Do you understand what that means?
Yeah. As you go up, I think it becomes less fun, maybe. Like moving back to an assistant, I realized it put the fun back in football for me. You know, coaching in college, that's a headache. And then those guys go to pro. And in both places, I think you find that even though you got the elite that hadn't really been coached hard. And if you haven't been coached hard, it's hard to all of a sudden take it. You don't really know how to react. And I think that's why we see a lot of things going on with regards to the transfer portal. You know, if you can't take hard coaching, well, I'll go someplace else and think it's going to be better. Well, it's not going to be better. Most guys I know that are good coaches are hard coaches, or try to be.
Oh, it is, Coach, especially on that offensive line. I mean, I don't know how you can coach and not be a savage. I mean, Rick Trickett. I mean, Coach, I don't know if you know Coach Trickett, but I mean, my dad was a drill sergeant in the Marine Corps at Parris Island. And, you know, there was nothing anybody could ever say or do to me that was worse than what my dad did to me or said to me growing up. And that's not saying it was that bad, but I mean, it would probably be illegal today. And I deserved it. Again, I wouldn't be the person I am without him and my mom. But Coach Trickett, Coach, did you ever have any interactions with him? Just thinking about O-line coaches.
When Rich Rodriguez took the job at WVU, we went up there, and Brad Bradley was actually, I think, GA in there. And Brad in the room there and got us access to everything we needed. We came back and put in the spread because we had a mod. What you could have put in anything with a mod and it'd been okay. Woo! But you know, and Trickett was his offensive line coach, and Trickett was hard. He was the hard of the hard. He and Phil Elmation were both there, and it was brutal. Practice was brutal.
Coach, did you feel? I went and watched Everett Withers' first practice at JMU in spring ball, and he had just left Urban Meyer in Ohio State, and my brother went to their first coaches clinic they had at Ohio State with Urban Meyer, and he said it was the most vicious practice he's ever been to. I mean, it was like like just, and I felt sorry for the players. I mean, and I think I'm pretty hard, but I mean, that's the way it was. That's the way you got to coach this game. The greatest do. Phil Elmasian told Mike Smith that the greatest practices he's ever seen, this is what Coach Smith says, the greatest practice he's ever seen on any level, being at 30 different schools and places, was on Hampton High's football field. And I thought that's the greatest compliment you could ever give a coach. Not that you had the best team or won something, but the best practices. You know,
Mike Smith was a master at that. At Hampton.
Why?
He had complete control. And you know, if a kid practiced at Hampton that morning and practiced a kick return that afternoon, Phil was okay with it. He wasn't going to chase anybody. He knew somebody else would show up. So, you know, he was hard. Mike was hard.
Who are the GOATs, Coach, of Virginia? When we talk about high school coaches, who's on the Mount Rushmore?
Harry Fry.
Where is he from?
Gate City.
Ooh, I used to go watch those guys play Appalachia, Coach.
Oh,
EC Glass, the House Rights. I used to watch them play Tom Turner's teams.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, Coach.
Tom Turner was one. Nick Talabro.
Where's Nick Talabro from?
He was at Tazewell and then at Gate City. Won a couple of state championships at both. And he was from Bluefield, actually. And then there was Coach Carlock, John Shamara, Merle Gaynor. I mean, there's all kinds of them from that area.
I mean, football is just important in Virginia. And at one time, I mean, it still is with, you know, with Graham winning the state championship this year, but football was so important in those little communities. Talk about that, Coach, like coaching against those guys. I mean, I'm pretty sure you coached against Tom Turner. The Richland story. where they had the cleats that were too long. Wasn't that against y'all?
No, that was against Salem.
Oh, it was against Salem.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you know, Richland wasn't the first school to ever do that. They were they were the first school to get caught. Well, they weren't really caught. They were turned in by the guy that sold them to them.
Yeah, from Salem.
Yeah, right. But
we had a player on our team, Smitty. Smitty was 5'9". They said, Smitty, in high school you were 5'11".
But you know, there was no try to impress you attitude in Southwest Virginia. It was get down and get dirty, and you know there was no frills. It was a no frills game when I was there. Line up, and of course it was like electric football. If you remember electric football when you were a kid, you put them on there and it kind of all went up in a pile. That's the way we played back then.
Yeah, and in Appalachia, man, they had the worst field. They didn't want to have, they would water that thing down.
No, they didn't want you to be comfortable or happy.
And so that's where I come from. I mean, I'm from Chesterfield. My mom's from Hopewell. My dad's from Appalachia. They met in Hopewell. So I'm kind of Jim Timms said a lot here. Jim Timms been commenting. Coach Bald, he says good leaders always have a plan. He's commenting on you. He said you got to be on route Mount Rushmore, Coach. Coach is on route Mount Rushmore. Kyle Jolly, Lauren Johnson has to be on there too. Lauren's won 5 state championships at Highland Springs. Coach, I know you know Highland Springs.
Yes.
So after you got out of college, were you an assistant coach? How long were you an assistant coach, and where were you at?
I was assistant coach for 24 years, and I was at Richlands for 2 years, and then at Graham High School the rest of that. And I mean, and it wasn't just I wasn't just an assistant coach. It was a hard job. We washed after every practice. We mopped the dressing room after every practice. Because Coach Carlock was a Marine DI, and that's just the way it was. And it was a hard gig for 24 years, but it didn't hurt me, not at all.
Yeah.
And
Jim Tim says, I mean you, Troy. No, Jim Tim, I'm actually I'm the most penalized coach of all time on any level, from rec ball to pro ball, and I'm the low man on the totem pole. All right, I am the lowest of the low. I can't even believe it, Coach, that I got you on here. I mean, how do you feel? I mean, the technology. I know that we didn't do the clinic and we don't have the face-to-face interaction, but I mean, to have 50 clinics and 50 coaches like yourself, where these young guys can watch them. And I know, Coach, you know all these guys. Brad Bradley, I've already had on. Billy Mills, Dinwiddie. Yeah, if you got to go, Coach, let me know. But how does that make you feel? I mean, that these young guys got this access.
Again, I'm a blessed guy. And, I'm just so fortunate to have been able to do what I've done. And, only by the grace of God have I been able to do this for 43 years. And I just, being blessed. I guess that's the thing that has allowed all this. God's graces and being blessed.
Jim Tim says maybe that's something to work on, Troy, penalties. Well, I mean, I used to be the young coach, Jim Tim. I was a head coach when I was 28, and I already had a reputation as an assistant coach. And yeah, I've never been accused of being soft. All right. I mean, I've been accused of a lot of things. So Coach, I know you got to go. Who are some of the have you got to go, Coach?
I got probably 2 minutes.
Okay. In those 2 minutes, Coach, before you got to go, what's on your heart? What would you like to say to the coaches out there watching or will watch this podcast? What advice could you give them, Coach? A guy that's got 40 years in it.
Guys, it's the greatest job that there is, helping young men achieve something other than athletic success, but success in their life. It's the greatest job there is. And when it gets tough and when it gets hard, don't give up. Fight through. You're going to persevere. Just fight it. Be a leader. Be a man's man. And do the right thing.
Yeah, I got my buddy here says Coach Taylor in high school hit a guy trying to get on the bus after a game. It was so late we started the next season with a personal foul because of him. That's true. I got the latest late hit of all time, Coach. So, Coach, thank you. I want to say thank you to our sponsor, Rat Coach. We'll get you back on, Coach.
Well, I enjoyed it very much. I like just talking to guys.
Yeah, well, we're going to get you back on, Coach. Once you get back from Greensboro.
Okay.
Travel safe. See ya, brother.
Okay, take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.